Greetings folks! Today I'm going to be showing you how to paint your very own Blacksteel Paladin. I'm actually going to be using this as a Death Knight for one of my upcoming D&D characters. Ooh, excuse me. A little bit of allergies. Or probably I'll use it for an NPC. To start things off with this character, we're going to be using a little bit of our Citadel layer paint, Iron Breaker. And we're going to be covering the whole miniature except for the base and the cape with this. This will be our base paint, if you will. This miniature is already primed in Corax White. I'm just going to put this paint generally all over this. Now I already have it thinned down in the pot I'm using, so I don't have to worry about constantly sitting down to paint while it's drying on the brush. That and layer paints are pretty thin to begin with, which is why they work pretty well on base coats. Now, creating Blacksteel is one of my favorite. Well, just colored metal in general is a nice little technique to make your miniatures and your personal miniatures especially pop out a little more compared to everyone else's. The one downside with these pre-built and pre-primed miniatures from like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons is it's a little hard to paint them sometimes. You got to get into all these little nooks and crannies, and sometimes you don't always get every piece. You could snip it apart and put it back together, but that would cause a few issues by perhaps fraying some of your material on it, messing up a few of the parts. Just overall maybe making it a little weird. But if pulled off right, you can actually kit bash one of these and make it your own by implementing some parts from like Warhammer miniatures or other miniatures really. Or even other Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons miniature sets. Alright, I am just about done here. Just need to put some on the arm. Alright, we're going to let that dry for about a minute and then get to the second part. Alrighty, after that it's drying, after it's dried, we will now apply a Richie Violet shade all over the miniature. This will help not only darken the recesses, but start making it a little of a darker pigmentation for when we apply our black coat. We're just going to cover all of the metal bits. As you see with that added, it's already starting to have a nice effect to help with the highlighting and color contrast between the pigments. Now, as far as miniatures go, I actually like this one a lot. It has this very nice like Paladin look to it, very elven, almost like a weird blend of Greek and Celtic. It's a really, really fun little miniature, especially when it comes to painting. And it's also perfect for making a Death Knight looking miniature. Or Black Knight in this case. Alright, with that applied, we're going to let it dry for about a minute and then get on to our next step. Now for the next step, we are going to be using our contrast Black Templar as if it were a wash. And we are going to put it on the metal parts. This will give us our nice Blacksteel look, and with the paint being so thin, after applying a little bit of water to it, it would easily brush through the parts here to give us that nice undercoat steel look. I'm going to be applying it to the whole miniature. Had a little too much there, so I'll just take some of that on my brush and then sweep it somewhere else. As you see with that nice thin coat, we're already starting to get that very nifty black steel look. Now the reason why I'm leaving some of my brush strokes in here while it's drying is to give it a fun little withering effect. Where the top, where it just got worn down by a lot of like rainfall, dust, scratches and all that, so it had a little bit of a very simple texture. This is where you actually would want your brush to leave brush strokes onto it. Usually that's not the case. And with this style executed, it's a very simple but effective way of making your stuff just pop. Really have more personality to your work, even if you're not a very good painter. As you saw here, all I did was apply a base coat of silver on top of a white, then slap on some violet shade, and then slap on another, like, sort of weird black basing shade. And a little dab there. And there we are. It's already drying, which is very nice, so I actually can pick it up and show you. There we are. We have our Blacksteel. You should see that nice combination of silver and purple showing underneath it, giving us a nice sheen effect. Which is why you want to apply it so thinly, so you can still see the metallic coating underneath. And since that is pretty much dry already, we can start getting to work on all the leather bits within the actual body and then onto the cloak and the hair. We'll be good from there. And of course, oops, dropped it. And of course our base. So for the next step, we are going to be using our Steel Legion Drab, which is a weird like mottled brown. And I'm going to use my very thin basing brush. It's a little frayed, but it's been through a lot of use, and it still works pretty well. Going to be putting a little bit here onto my brush, and I'm going to apply it to each of these little leather bits on the arm and the legs. Leather straps are generally placed in the back so you could tighten them when it comes to like armor or heavy like leather padding. It's quite common in fantasy designs and just based on real world designs as well. So you see there, just applying it a little bit to the back here. Alright. And we're going to be getting a little more to put on the hilt of the blade. Just right here. And then, still with the Steel Legion drab, we will apply it to the base of our miniature to give this a nice, like, muddy kind of dirt look going on down here. Just be careful of the feet, though. You don't want to mess up your paint job there. And the reason why we're now coating our base before we even touch the miniature is so that way any mistakes that came off of the miniature itself, we don't have to worry about too much, and if any of the basing color gets on the feet, at least on the very low part of the feet, it will add a nice subtle effect of this character going through the debris. Just speckling a little bit. And before we get on to our next step, we'll let that dry for about a minute, and then we'll get back to work. Now, on to our next step. We're going to be using a little bit of our Contrast Blood Angels Red, and we will be applying this to the cloak and the tiny little tabard on the waist section. Just gonna throw her faceplant into the right there. We'll just apply it all over. We'll be applying two coats of this. It is going to be a little tricky painting this on the inner side of the cloak. Cape, not cloak. Just gotta watch out for my paint job here that I did on the actual body. This part you just want to be a bit patient with. And don't worry if some white spots show up. We're going to be hitting it with a second coat soon. Alright, I'll let that dry and then apply the second base coat, and then I'll show you where to go from there. Now that that is dry, we will be using a little bit of our Mephiston Red base paint, and we're going to apply it as a edge highlight, if you will, onto the cape and the tabard on the front. The Blood Angel Red is pretty dark, especially after two coats. This will just help make it a little bit brighter, but you want to apply these semi-highlights onto the upper section of the cloak. Alright, with that applied, and while it's drying, we are going to add a little bit of extra detail to this miniature. Give it some nice, like, bright brass trimmings by using our Retributor Armor base paint. And use it to color in a few parts of our armor. So to do that, we're going to be using our fine tip basing brush and put a little bit of this onto our brush here. But first I need to mix the pot, because sometimes when these pots rest, the paint separates a little bit. So I'm going to apply some here, just very gently. Take your time with this step though. Just these subtle, very subtle highlights can really add a number to this. Because the black and the silver fall into a sort of cool color category, whereas this Retributor Retributor Armor and the red are a nice warm contrast against it. So it really makes any of the brighter, like more warmful colors you put on top of it pop out even more, especially at a distance. Which really sets it onto your character when it's on the tabletop. And funny enough, apparently this color scheme kind of makes it look like it just came out of a Warhammer Age of Sigmar Chaos Army. Well, you know what? That works out pretty well. Go Chaos! Alright, these shin guards are going to be pretty tricky. Because they have this weird, like, it kind of looks like an Ankh, which is an Egyptian cross-looking thing. Just put that on the bottom, put it right there. Let's see if there's any more. Yep, right here. It's very light. And on the glove right here, and then I think the front of the helmet has it too. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Kind of. But you know what? We'll leave it how it is. We'll just touch up the down here onto this little sigil hiding here. A little bit there and a little bit there. Touch that up a bit. Then we'll put some on the hilt of the blade over here. The hilt and the handle is very different. The handle is what you put your hand onto, where the hilt is actually above it, almost like a little hand guard from the blade itself. We'll just apply it a little bit. And we're just about done with this. All we need to do is add a little bit of detail to the top of the head. I'm still not sure what kind of color would go good for that hair up there. And then touching up our base. Ooh, and the eyes here. Actually, I think the eyes are fine how it is. Yeah, they're dark enough, you can see them. Upon further inspection, I'm actually kind of digging the white color from the base coat. And a little ponytail here. So I'm actually gonna touch it up with some brighter Quax white. Just apply it to the ponytail here. Now while that is doing its drying thing, which we're pretty much just done with the model there, we're going to be using a little bit of this Reaper Master Series paint, which is a tan skin. We're going to be dry brushing a little bit onto the base, because so far it looks just brown, like nothing but brown. There's no real highlight in it, except for the darker parts where the brown didn't really seep in. So we're going to apply this a little bit. This will give it a nice, like, kind of mottled dirt look. I'm just going to dry brush it. We're actually going to be using two different colors with this dry brush. We just want to make this part brighter before I get our even brighter part. Okay, and to make it brighter, we're going to be using a little bit of Paladin witch flesh. This will kind of make it look like a nice, besides dirt, like almost like a gravel, sandy dirt you'd see, like if you were to go on a beach near like a coastal shore. We're just going to be dry brushing it a little bit. The reason why it'll be looking a little white is due to all the salt and whatever other like small fine rock shells and other things are in it. In terms of the shore, when it comes to just dirt you'd see out there, it's probably just random debris and the coloration of it really from natural from the environment. And here we are. Our Blacksteel Paladin is done for the day. It's a very simple but effective color scheme. You could probably add a few little more shading and like recess and edge highlighting, but honestly, just from the washes and the base coats and a little bit of detail here and there we put on, I think it looks pretty dandy. Now that is done, the video for today is over as well. If there's any questions you have, feel free to ask in the comments below. Maybe leave a subscription if you want. Other than that, you folks have a great day. Take care.